First of all, welcome to Samui Real session 158. 158. Thank you very much. So for those who are here for the first time, you know that we do this. We've been doing this group for about 3 years now. It's called Samui Real Critical Thinkers Community. It's what we call ourselves now. We love it. But of course, there's a little bit of conspiracy amongst us critical thinkers. So everybody can hear me okay, yeah? So just so you know the schedule, normally what we do is we have a proper full-on, like I'd say heavyweight session in the bunker, which is at the back of the hotel. That's a proper room set up, and some of you, I know you went to see it tonight. So the bunker is a proper room set up, projector. We have proper like PowerPoint presentations. We zoom it out, we zoom people in. At the front, it's normally just a casual social night. So it's a casual social night. 2 weeks ago, for the first time, just for shits and giggles, edit it later, we decided to just throw a little quick talk in, just something light. So I'm going to talk about something tonight. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to talk about, but I'm going to make it up as I go along, okay? So I think I put a little title out yesterday called the Moon and Other Mysteries. So 2 weeks ago, for the first time, we just gave this a little try, and it was very small, only 12, 13 people around here. So if you're not interested in the talk, feel free to just go ahead, talk and drink, and ignore me. But if you're interested and you have questions about some of the things that I'm going to talk about tonight, then by all means, this is a great opportunity to ask questions. So I'm just going to recap on what I talked about 2 weeks ago. Oh, by the way, for those who don't know me, my name is Pat. Hello, everybody. Hello. No applause needed whatsoever. Stop it. Okay. So 2 weeks ago, we did a little talk on the moon. Okay? And I'll tell you why. Because in this group, we talk about all kinds of different topics. We talk geopolitics, the banking system, finance system. We talk about pharmaceutical industry. We talk about the intervention of, alien species into human affairs. We talk about all kinds of things. The current situation in the United States with the elections, the wars that are happening around the world. And just to lighten it up for the social night, I decided to do something a little different. And that was do a little talk about the moon. Now, my real motive for talking about the moon was because during the socializing evenings, we talk a lot about different things, and we have a lot of like what I call which are way out there theories, and I'm guilty as anyone else in the group. And I just want to talk a little bit about mainstream science, okay? About the moon. Surprisingly, myself included until quite recently, many of us don't actually know how the moon works in relation to the Earth. Would that be a fair comment, or am I just pissing in the wind? Fair comment? Yes. We have an idea. We have this idea that, the moon's up there, But the question, and I asked this 2 weeks ago, why do we only see one side of the moon? Does everybody know that we only see one side of the moon? Is there a dark side of the moon? A question to you. Is there a dark side of the moon? Yeah? Well, actually, we don't actually say. In science, they don't call it the dark side of the moon. They call it the far side of the moon. Even though it may be on the album cover of some well-known bands that we love, Dark Side of the Moon, Pink Floyd, love them. But actually, we really refer to it as the far side of the moon. Because the dark side of the moon is dark for half the time that it's facing away from the sun, and it's bright for the other half that it's facing the sun. So really we'd call it the far side of the moon. Now, two things I want to talk about tonight, just to recap on what I talked about before. One is, why do we only see one side of the moon? Okay, here's a question. Who thinks that the moon rotates on its axis? This is the moon, rotate. Does it rotate on its axis, or does the moon not rotate at all?
Sure, it does, but very slowly.
Very slowly, okay. Okay, so I'm just going to explain again, and I did this 2 weeks ago, and I have updated my model. This is the Earth. On my left, your right. This is the moon, right? So, for those who think the moon doesn't rotate, let me show you, let me repeat. For those who think that the moon does not rotate on its own axis, but believe that it orbits and it goes around the Earth, which I think everybody would agree the moon goes around the Earth. Does everybody believe that?
And it's not flat.
Okay?
It's not flat.
Okay. We'll find out later. So this is a view from the top, 2D. This is our Earth, hand drawn by myself. Thank you very much. This is the moon. So we believe, everybody agrees that the moon it orbits the Earth. So let me show you what happened. I've made it dark on this side, so let's just call this, again, let's call it the dark side. Even though I don't, I call it the far side. Thank you, Tom, my assistant. Okay, let me show you. See this red arrow pointing to the Earth? So this is what it looks like. Remember, this is now the far side or the dark side of the moon from where we are. We are observing from here. So let's see what happens when the moon orbits the Earth but does not rotate on its axis. Okay, here we go. Oh, wait a minute. Which way does the moon orbit the Earth? That way or that way? Which way? That way? Yeah, that's right. Counterclockwise. For those who didn't answer because they weren't sure, no problem. Okay, so the moon orbits. This is what happens. It's not rotating. Okay, it's not rotating. And we get over here. Now we can suddenly see Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon.
The far side.
The far side of the moon. Okay, let's just continue. Thank you, Tom, on the top. Okay, continue. This is the moon not rotating. The dark side will be here, but look, we can see it. So clearly, when it doesn't rotate, sorry Tom, just slightly. When it doesn't rotate, we can see, sorry, just I'll hold, okay. When it doesn't rotate, thank you, we can see the far side. So, what in fact, according again to mainstream science, what in fact happens, this red arrow will always point at Earth. Okay? Here we go. Just watch. This is Earth. Here goes the red arrow. It's always pointing. Now note this. Do you see the shaded part? The shady? No, you don't. You only see this side. But is the moon actually rotating on its axis? Yes, it is. It is. The moon is actually doing this once, but it is so slow, it takes roughly 28 days. Why they round it up to 28 days, we don't know. But in fact, they say it takes 27.3 days for the moon to make one rotation on its axis. And that is what we call a lunar month. Is that clear? Oh, everyone going, I need another drink. Is it clear? Let me just show you again, okay? If the moon is not rotating on its own axis, like the Earth spins really fast. How fast does the Earth spin supposedly at the equator? Okay, supposedly 1,680 kilometers an hour, which is 1,000 miles per hour. The Earth is apparently spinning, right? That's how fast it spins. Or it makes one full rotation in 24 hours is the other way to look at it, right? So this red arrow is pointing at the Earth the whole time, but this is actually making a rotation on its own axis, and it's also orbiting the Earth, and it takes 28 days about. Okay? Do we understand? Yeah? Okay, does anyone here do astrology or anything? Human design? Yeah? Okay, so let me bring out the big guns. So let me show you the next thing. The other thing that I think that we don't actually think much about, which is the phases of the moon. We look up at the moon, we go, oh, beautiful full moon tonight. A lot of crazies out there. Sure, but it's a beautiful night. So, where is the sun in relation to the moon right now? Right? So, let us take a look at this chart that I prepared 2 weeks ago for you. Wrong side. Bum, bum. Look at that. Okay, it might be a bit hard for you guys at the back to see, but I'm going to ask the lovely Alia if she can hold that up. Can you guys see that? Can you see that? Can everyone see, even at the back? So let me just explain simply. In the top right hand corner, that's our sun. Our sun, okay? A little sun. So our sun, a sequencing star, our sun sends rays of sunlight out. Now, what we call a new moon is when we cannot actually see the moon because it's completely dark. Okay? A new moon is when the moon is between the earth and the sun, and the sunlight hits the other side of the moon, but we are looking from this side, therefore we only see the shadow and we see nothing. That's called a full moon. Oh my God. And we use this in astrology. Now, when the moon, let's just say, the moon moves 45 degrees, and the moon, remember, orbits counterclockwise or anti-clockwise. The moon, as the earth moves, this is the direction the earth moves around the sun, which is also anti-clockwise. Okay, as the moon, from this position, the earth moves, the moon will go around the earth like this. It goes to 45 degrees. This is what we see. From earth, the sun hits this side of the moon, the other side is dark. From our point of view, from earth, all we see is this little bit of bright moon on the right side. We call this phase when the moon gets bigger, the actual part that we can see, the bright side, we call this waxing. Wax on, wax on, wax on. Remember that. Karate Kid, thank you very much. Okay?
Grow in German.
It's right, exactly. It means to grow. So the size of the bright part of the moon is growing. We're waxing on, okay? So now the earth moves again. Now the moon has gone from the full moon position and it goes 90 degrees. It's at the side of the earth. The sun hits the moon, half the other side is dark. What we see from earth is boom. And we call that the first quarter. So note here, thing to note is the part that we can see that's bright is on the right side. Now, I made this point 2 weeks ago. Usually we don't even think about, unless you went to a really good school and they tell you this, we actually don't really think about which side of the moon is bright. We just think, oh look, there's a crescent. Boom. Take note of which side the bright crescent is, right or left. Okay? So on the other side of you mean the southern hemisphere? Yeah, it's a little bit on the bottom part of the moon. So I'll explain that in a minute. Good point. Okay, so here we are 90 degrees. That's what we see. It's bright on the right half. We call that the first quarter. Now the moon goes around another 45 degrees, and then what we see, the sun hits the moon on this side. The other side is dark always. What we see from Earth is a bigger part of the brighter moon. We see a bigger, bright part of the moon that is called a waxing gibbous. Gibbous means to bulge in Latin. So note, the right side of the moon is bulging out. Now there's a dark crescent on the left side. So why, I'll point it in a minute, okay? So that's called a waxing gibbous. Now the moon moves 180 degrees from the full moon, the new moon phase. It moves to the opposite side. Now the sun hits this side, makes it bright. That's what we see, and that is full moon, and that is your full moon party on Koh Phangan once a month. Right? Bit of advertising there. Okay? So the moon moves a little bit further. Now the sun hits the moon here. This is the Earth. This side is dark. What we see from Earth is this. Now the moon, the bright part, has gone from a fully bright moon, and the bright part is getting smaller. This is what we call waning. A waning moon, okay? So it's called a waning gibbous. We go a little bit further. We get to here. What we see is now the moon is half bright, but not on the right side. It's on the left side. So that's called the last quarter. Then we go again. It goes another 45 degrees. So now the moon has come from new moon, full moon, round to almost completing one cycle, one phase. And this is called a waning crescent. So remember, the bright part is getting smaller, waning. When the bright part gets bigger, it's waxing. Wax on, wane off. Got it? And then we go to the next stage where the moon has made one complete orbit around the Earth, and it's back to the same position. Voila, we're back to a new moon. So why? It's just a little bit of interesting information that you can look up at the moon and you can tell where the moon is by how you see the moon, which is something I think a lot of people don't think about, right?
Also, at one time in the days the moon rises and sets as well.
Exactly. It's the times of the rising times of the moons and setting times, right?
When the moon sets, when the moon rises in the day, I think that means it's in
Waning phase, yeah. So let me just, I'm just going to simplify. Okay, so now, thank you. So now, just, you think, okay, so when did we go, if we did really go to the moon, what phase was the moon when Apollo 11, if it really went to the moon? About where was the moon? Good, I have no idea. I'm just throwing it out there. Maybe one of you know. No? Okay, let me just take a stab in the dark. Maybe it was in the waxing crescent. Boom. So Apollo 11 and Apollo 14, they landed on the moon, allegedly, supposedly, disclaimer. They landed on the moon when the moon was in this phase. So you'll see, so did they land on the moon? If they did, when it was dark? No. It's supposedly on the bright side of the moon, not on the far side of the moon, but they were on the bright side of the moon. So all lunar landings, all 6 of the successful landings on the moon, were when it was in either waxing crescent or first quarter stage, just to give you an idea. Yeah? Oh, okay, got it. Does everyone understand? Yeah?
So there's always some darkness as well.
So there's always some darkness. Always darkness. And the darkness here is not because of the shadow of the earth. Just to be clear. Okay? Just to be clear. The darkness here is because the moon, only one side of the sun is hitting the moon at every stage. So these are just like 9 diagrams just to show you one circle. All I've done is gone from full new moon, 45 degrees, 90 degrees, 135, and then 180, blah, 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 like that. Of course, there are different stages in between here where the crescent will be slightly bigger. But these are the main phases that we talk about when we're looking at the moon. So you can go out now and you can have confidence, should you remember this, and you can go, you know what? We're in a waxing crescent right now. And then, holy shit, where did you learn that? Now, here's the thing. This is your mainstream science. Now, you can choose to outright reject what I just said because that's bullshit. You can think that is totally fine. But at least now, when people talk about stuff, now that you have a standard, you have a point of reference from which you can talk about other things like what? Did we really go to the moon, right? All of that kind of stuff.
Cameraman.
Yeah, so this is interesting. So last time I talked about the anomalies of the moon. Our moon does have a few anomalies to the point where there are serious scientists and astrophysicists that actually believe the moon is not a natural satellite because of the way our moon acts, No, I'm kidding. Okay, so let's just take, is there anything else before I go to questions? Is there any other moon in our solar system that we know about at this point in time that acts similarly to our moon?
I think no.
Okay, that was a totally good guess. Actually, it just seems there is another moon. So Saturn, the ones with the rings around it, Saturn has what, 23, 26 moons? The third largest moon of Saturn is a moon called Iapetus. Now Iapetus, some people believe that's where George Lucas got the idea for the Death Star, because Iapetus is like our moon. Only one side faces Saturn, it goes around Saturn, one side is bright all the time, one side is actually dark, it's so far from the sun. And Iapetus seems to have these hexagonal shapes all over the planet's surface. And the ridge, the equator of Iapetus has mountains. The entire equator, if you imagine the equator of Earth having mountains right around the entire planet, you go, holy shit, that's a lot of mountains. And it's a big moon. And scientists are baffled. I mean, like some of them are like 7 miles high, 10 miles high, these mountain ranges that go all around the entire moon, Iapetus. Also, it's known as the yin-yang moon, because when you look at it, it has that slight curvy bright side and dark side. But Iapetus is another moon, about which some scientists, astronomers or astrophysicists, they sort of think that moon also could be artificial. It is the chances of having a moon like that, I mean that close to the planet, like our Earth is they believe our Earth is like incredibly, it's just sort of the chances of our Earth being that close and that large to our planet is like, well, this is like 1 in hundreds of billions, the chances of it, which is why some people actually believe it may not be a natural satellite. Yeah. I'm just gonna, if anyone wants to jump in with a question now, feel free, before I just get sidetracked to like the Bermuda Triangle and stuff like that.
Well,
Question.
Okay.
Loud voice talk. Yeah.
You basically told us that the moon does rotate on its axis.
Yep. The moon rotates on its axis.
Well, I'd kind of say, what is the moon's axis?
Oh, okay. So the moon,
Because
we talk about a north pole and a south pole on the moon as well. We do talk about, yeah, they talk about there's a north pole and a south pole.
But what we're talking about is that the moon rotates
Yeah.
on the Earth's axis, effectively.
Oh, okay. I don't have a ball that I can hold, but just basically stick a stick through it, and that would be its axis,
Well,
right?
in
Like
some
that.
ways, the moon is not rotating. It is going constantly to a ball which is moving. It's showing a constant face to a rotating ball.
Yep. To a rotator.
So I'm not sure
Okay.
that you can even say it has an axis.
So if the this is the moon. If the moon was and the Earth were moving like this, you know what I mean? Like this, you'd say they're probably tidally locked, gravitationally tidally locked like this. But in fact, the Earth is spinning like this, like incredibly crazy, and the moon is just doing this,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So this is spinning, rotating on its axis, on its axis. The moon is also rotating on its axis,
I would
but
argue
at a
that the
slow
moon
rate.
has no axis.
Yeah. Okay. So we had the same conversation 2 weeks ago. So I'm
Okay,
saying
sorry,
you
I
can.
forgot about
It's
that.
okay. It's okay. It's the same thing. You and I just called it. You could say it's tidally locked. All I was saying is what mainstream astrophysicists would call it. They would say the moon is actually rotating on its axis. That's what they say. Not my words. Disclaimer. Okay. Cue. Toads.
You either believe this unbelievable model
Yep.
where the moon is rotating at exactly the same speed as
Yeah.
the Earth.
Yeah.
You only see one face.
Yep.
Phenomenal
Yeah.
coincidence.
Yeah.
And another phenomenon.
When in reality, if you actually just photograph the moon,
Yeah.
it is slightly rocking from side to side.
Yeah.
So that's the only actual motion you see.
Okay.
Take physical evidence.
Yep.
As opposed to what you just described as why we don't see the moon approaching a solar eclipse.
Yeah.
Why some lunar eclipses we see both the moon and the sun at the same time.
Yeah.
And why if you went to the moon, they never photographed the moon. So if you've been to the moon 6 times.
Okay. That's a lot of questions, Tones. Yeah. That's a lot of questions.
Somehow missed.
Okay, so again, it's up to you totally if you want to believe this. All I'm presenting is this as a scientist. So you're saying that the moon's rocking like this. Again, you're equally welcome to sort of present that evidence as well. This is just a basic scientific model so that people understand. So you know where this is going? You sort of know where this is. Okay, maybe not. Okay, so these are good questions. One, no, I cannot explain why people can see stars through the moon. Maybe there's evidence of that. I don't know. A solar eclipse, for a solar eclipse, for example. So again, our moon, our sun, if our Earth is here, this is easier, right? Now think of it as a ball, okay? I'm going to do this. Our moon supposedly does not rotate at the equatorial level, the plane of eclipse. It doesn't rotate in relation to our Earth at the equatorial plane, which is our moon is our Earth is supposedly tilted at 23.5 degrees. This is the angle, right? Our moon doesn't go like this. It's at a 5-degree incline, which is why when it's way up there, you think, well, how come there's not a solar eclipse every month? if the moon, like I just showed you, and I explained here, you'd think, like here, how come we see a full moon? If the moon is this close, and well, how come the Earth's shadow isn't covering the moon, for example? It's a fair question. Yeah, yeah, okay. So just take Ruben. So one, this moon in a real life scale, this moon would be, sorry, around Alia's knee. This moon is not this close. It'd be way past her knee, down there. Second is the moon is actually on a 5-degree incline to the equatorial plane, to our plane. So it's always slightly above, which is, the sunlight can always hit it. It's not directly hiding behind the Earth every month. That happens once every so many months, which is why we get the eclipse. Yep, exactly. Good point. So good point Ruben made. Another anomaly. So again, this is an anomaly that, as I say. So totally don't dismiss what Tones is saying, because there are serious scientists and astrophysicists that also think, wait a minute, okay, they have a different view than Tones, but they think, wait a minute, there's something crazy here. Like our sun, when there's a solar eclipse or occult, solar eclipse, take the first word, solar, is being eclipsed. Okay, so if you get confused which is a lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse, solar is first. It means the sun is being blocked by what? Either by Earth, right? So when we have an eclipse and the moon is blocking the sun, so it's a solar eclipse, the moon is blocking the sun, why is it that the moon, that tiny little moon, can cover the entire sun? Well, what the fuck? How can that happen? It should be impossible. I mean, the sun's a huge thing. So again, here we go. The mainstream scientific explanation is the distance from the Earth to the moon is exactly 400 times the size. The sun is 400 times the size of the Earth, the diameter of the moon, sorry, and it's exactly 400 times the distance. And this is like some coincidence. And even scientists go, well, that is some real coincidence, that the moon exactly covers the sun. And there are scientists that think that's a little dodgy. They go, again, which leads them to think that actually maybe the moon is not a natural satellite. Sorry.
I just have a point to make.
Yep.
The sun is 93 million miles away from the Earth, and the temperature in the eclipse drops by 12 degrees.
Yep.
What on the Earth? What could it be possible that the moon blocks the Earth for longer? Just to put it out there.
Uh-huh.
And the second question is.
Oh, so what was the actual question?
The question is.
Yeah.
And the relationship of the oceans, which
Yeah.
is a massive thing, and how that whole connection
Yeah.
works. Have you got any things to offer on the
It's a fun one. It's a funny one, and I can't offer you a lot. It's basically what we're told is basically the moon has that gravitational pull where, and this is the story again, choose to believe it or not, but the moon, when it's closest to the Earth, when it comes closer to the Earth, it slightly pulls, especially on a full moon where it's closer, it pulls the water, majority of it, and it slightly bulges one side of the Earth. That is the thing. But there are people that say, well, how come in smaller, like inland seas, don't have the same kind of bulging and don't have the high tides? So the idea that twice a day, it's pulling the tides, it's pulling the water to one side of the Earth, which causes a high tide on one side, low tide on the other, and it does it twice a day. This is the story. And this is the interesting thing, is because I mean, when you go and travel and you research other ancient civilizations, like you see that they understand this. I went like 30 years ago exactly. I was in 3 months in Mexico and Guatemala, and I went there twice for 3 months, and I spent time in certain libraries, like researching and looking in. This 30 years ago, looking into some of the stuff that they knew about the moon, and it's actually quite fascinating. Either they were all on mushrooms and they all had the same sort of, way out sort of experience, or they had some serious astronomical knowledge about the moon, and based on what they understood scientifically what the moon was doing, that is pulling water out at certain times, they based things like agriculture, they based things like building times on that. Whether I can explain it or not, they did. They cut and they harvested full moons because they knew that most of the water would be pulled to the top of the corn or whatever, and they knew this, and this knowledge was specifically written. That's why they cut on full moon. Easier. They had light. Yeah, they had light to work it. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so yes, Olive. Oh, jeez. What is a black hole? Anyone want to take this question? What is a black hole? Is there anyone that's actually a scientist? Okay, all I know about black holes is a black hole is basically, as far as I know, it is just, a black hole is just when gravity is so great that it comes to one point, and then even light, gravity is so strong that even light cannot escape it. So basically black holes, you have two things. You have what they call the horizon event, which is basically the outside of it, where gravity is very strong, it pulls things in, and within, everything comes so compressed, it comes to one little point. Inside the black hole, they call that the singularity. So that's inside. So even everything, usually our understanding is a black hole is usually formed when a star is dying. When you have a dying star, it implodes, it just sucks, the gravity comes in so much that it pulls right in, it pulls light and everything, and they're invisible, because even light can't escape. So the event horizon is the surface outside area of the black hole where it's greatest, the gravity is the strongest, and inside is the most intense spot where everything is compressed into a little pinpoint. That's what they call the singularity. Yeah, so I'm not really big on black holes. But would it be devastating if there was one here? Probably, they say so. Yeah. You know, so supposedly they're going through space. Some people believe the center of our galaxy, not our solar system, many solar systems, galaxy. The center of our galaxy possibly could be a giant black hole. Yeah. Probably Google it. Yeah. Anything else? Yes, Kathy.
If the moon is not a natural satellite, who would have created it?
Oh jeez, there's another good question. The question was, if the moon is not a natural satellite, like I stupidly suggested before, then who would have created it? Good point. Any ideas?
God.
There's one. God. Right? Yes? Aliens. We all love aliens. Yeah, we talked about 2 weeks ago. Remember about the moon? The interesting thing about the moon, remember the crater sizes? One thing that they discovered, because they went to the moon, right, is that despite the diameter size of the crater on the far side of the moon or on this side of the moon, even if you have a small diameter crater or a large crater with like 50 kilometers, some of them are huge, the depth of the crater was almost the same, and that was something they couldn't explain. So generally when we talk about meteorites or asteroids hitting Earth, we know usually sort of the size of the asteroid by how deep the crater is and how the diameter of the actual rim of the crater. But on the moon, for some reason they go, hang on, why isn't it deeper here? And this is, one astrophysicist even said, it's almost as if there's an inner or outer shell that is protecting the surface of the moon. So again, who knows? Yeah, oh, another question. Jeez, let's go.
Not by, like...
Aliens, humans.
Or, like
Oh, naturally. Yeah.
created naturally.
Yeah.
And it was placed there.
Yeah.
How would it move around the Earth?
Oh, okay. Yeah, good question. So I think why, if the moon is not natural, and it was actually, it's artificial, and it was brought into the current orbit that it is around the Earth, how would it move around? So your guess is as good as mine, and no one knows. I mean, there is that theory that, I mean, I'm not joking, that perhaps it was towed here. You can read a lot. It was towed here by extraterrestrials. Some people say that. You know, that's why we just don't know. Yeah, well, good question. But one is that some people believe that the moon may have been here like way before we were here. And there are other theories that the moon was actually brought here. That, you know, I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. There's this idea where they talk about Procellines. They talk about a people that remember a time when there was no moon in the sky. And they talk, I think in particular the Akkadians, right? But not the Akkadians from Sumeria, not the Akkadians, Assyrians from Sumeria, are different people in Eurasia. Akkadians seem to talk about a time, and they call it Pro-Selene, and they're known as the Pro-Selenides, where the moon was not in the sky, they didn't have the idea of tides and that, and it was very different in those days. Is it hearsay? Who knows, you know?
But in the biblical version,
Yep.
the Old Testament, I mean, the entity, the universe, the source,
Yeah.
created the sun
Mm-hmm.
to rule the daytime,
Yep.
and the moon
To rule the nighttime. Yep.
So you mean that the Bible is some sort of twisted, was twisted?
See, that totally opens up another can of worms, because I mean, I'm not sure if we talked about it last time, but when you talk about the Bible, like you talk about the Bible, we talk about the KJV, the King James Version. It's only in the last 400 years that we've had that version, right? And then when you go to the Hebrew version, like you have the Aleppo Codex, which is now in Syria, dates back to 930 AD. You have the Hebrew scriptures. Now, a lot of the stories that are in the English Bible, not all of them, but many, are found in the Hebrew Bible, but in a different way. There's more plurals, not so many one God, but more. And then when you go to the Sumerian, you'll find the same story. You'll find the same stories in the Hebrew scriptures you'll find in the Sumerian tablets, the clay tablets, which precede the Hebrew version. And this is where it gets interesting, because the ancient Sumerians, and I think I said this last time, can't remember, we learn a lot about the three civilizations, the Indus Valley, the Egyptians, but we don't really study much about the Sumerians. And they're the ones that had this kick-ass old language that was written cuneiform, written on wet clay tablets, dried, boom, baked. We've got 500,000 of them, and they've been translating them since like the 1800s, right? Now, in those, it seems to my knowledge, what I've read is there isn't any talk of one God created the sun and the other was the moon. It seems more scientific in their view of the world. And if this tablet, there's a tablet called the Flood Tablet, and their version of Noah, what we know is Noah, and Noah's Ark, they know in Sumerian as a guy called Utnashpitim. Is his name. Utnashpitim is a holy man whose wisdom, another king called King Gilgamesh in Akkadian, or Bilgamesh in Sumerian. Bilgamesh, supposedly 3200 BC, went to see this dude called Utnashpitim because he had the wisdom about immortality, because he was told by some guy, look, a big flood is coming, so we need you to build an ark, take your family, and save a pair of each species. And it's like, oh, it's exactly the same story. So the reason I'm saying this is because just demonstrate how quite precise and detailed their stories were in those days. They're not. It seems that they're less in ancient Sumerian tablets, if the translations are correct. It seems that they're less airy-fairy, and they're quite like, this is how it is. They have a lot of like down-to-earth daily life schedules written. This is what Joe did. He went and he ate lunch with his mate. And they have a lot of things like that. So when they write about stuff about the planets, about astronomy, about science, you either got to think, maybe whoever translated this translated a tablet that was a science fiction novel. We don't know if it was a Sumerian science fiction novel or if it's actual fact. If it's actual fact and not hearsay. And that is my point, is that it's very hard to know, but all I know from the Sumerian tablets that I've seen and read, they have specific things. The Flood Tablet, I watched a couple of TED Talks by archaeologists and that, linguists who were talking about the Flood Tablet. It's very specific. You know, they have another tablet which seems to show our solar system, and this is where we might get into an interesting thing someone asked about today. There's a tablet. Now, if this tablet is a depiction of our solar system, it's a little weird because it shows what we believe to be the sun with Mercury, Venus, Earth, our moon, Jupiter, Saturn, then it's got Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and then it has this other one out there, and everyone's going, what is that?
So like somebody, some entity, something is moving, the satellite moving. So it's not really dependent on time. So it can be possible that also the Old and the New Testament were manipulated, though there is still there is proof in the core proof.
It's possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that you have really to preserve it all.
Yep.
It was manipulated here and there. You have to be careful and critical.
Yep. Absolutely, absolutely, and there are many. I mean, it's true. So again, without sort of saying it's like this, it's like this, it's like this, all I can do is present the information that I know. And what is interesting is there are a number of scholars. This is the interesting thing. There are a number of scholars that are, for example, they're pastors, one level below bishop in their country, other who are Hebrew scholars, Italian. The name is Mauro Biglino, if anyone's interested. Mauro Biglino is a Italian Hebrew scholar of 35 years, and in 2012 he started looking into, he was an official translator for a company called Sao Paulo Edited, which is an official company that the Vatican uses to translate scriptures, and they would depend on this company. So Mauro, I call him Mauro, he restudied the scriptures, and what he discovered, the conclusion he came to was like, shit, like we were engineered by extraterrestrials. It's like, how did he come to that conclusion? He wrote a book in 2012. There is no God in the Bible. He wrote a book. Of course, he was immediately fired by the Vatican and by his bosses, and that was 2012. There's another guy, Paul Wallace, in Australia, 35 years, he was a pastor, and he talked about it, had an accident while he was in hospital. He started looking into it and studying the scriptures, the Hebrew scriptures himself. He also came to the conclusion that we, somewhere along the line, our one God that appears in our English Bible, if you go back to the Hebrew version, there are, what they call Elohim, there are plural. The gods they talk about are in plural. But then when you go back to, in Hebrew, right? Yeah, so then you're going back to the Hebrew, back to the Sumerian. They actually have specific names for people that seem to be gods, right? And it's very interesting how these guys came to the same conclusion, and they just left the church. That was their choice. That's the conclusion they came to. But you got to think, totally independent of each other. Zechariah Sitchin, everybody knows, I think, Zechariah Sitchin wrote a series called The Earth Chronicles, 8 books. They're in the bunker if anyone wants to borrow them. And that is a detailed English translation, 8 books. And it's very specific. And you got to think, either someone's got an incredible imagination, would have made a shitload of money back in the day, or possibly there's a lot of truth to it. So my point is that we just don't know. There's so much, and we're just talking about the moon, which just seems so close to us. But when you look at our history, you see that we just know so little about our ancient history. Yeah. Okay, guys, I don't want to put a dampener on this drinking thingy here, but unless anyone's got another question, I'm just going to shut the hell up and continue drinking. Anyone have another question? No? Thank you very much, guys. Enjoy drinking. I'm going to wander around and you can critique me and tones we talk. Okay.